They're poisoning our soil. They're poisoning our blood. Oh yeah, that makes me angry. This is Casey Murray Acts, but it's not for the purposes, but it does not make me angry for the reasons that is intended. It's because I recognize this language. I know exactly where this language was lifted from. This was not written by Trump. This was written by the speechwriters for the Nazi Party of Germany in the 1930s. These are lines that come directly from them. This, when the Unite the Right people were in Virginia yelling blood and soil, this is exactly what they were referencing. There's no more dog whistles. There's no more hiding it. There's no more pretending anything. And I know the F word gets tossed around like crazy by everyone because, oh, everything is fascism these days. But this is exactly what it is. We have heard calls for ethnic cleansing, which is a form of genocide. We have heard the, even though people are here legally, they're still not here legally because I didn't like the fact that they are here. And that they may have been here legally, they may have been brought in according to the rules, but they're still illegal. This is dangerous language. This is dangerous language. And it's not new. It's not like this is out of the blue or anything. I've been hearing this kind of language my whole life. It's always been out there. It's always been not even bubbling under the surface. You know, if you look like me and if you go to certain places, people have always been talking very openly like this. And it's scary. When I was younger, I didn't really recognize what exactly was being said, where exactly. But growing up in small town Indiana, the early 80s, there were kids I went to school with who had crosses burned in their front yards. I wasn't even told what that meant for years. As far as I was concerned, no, that looks like it's a cookout, it's a bonfire, whatever, people were talking about it, I didn't, and I did hear that it was because, they're Catholic. Well, it's because they were the minority in town, They didn't have anybody of color to pick on, so they picked on the Catholics instead. And that's how this goes. Even if you think that this is something that doesn't affect you because you look like me, because you look like the Orange Goblin. Well, if you look like the Orange Goblin, I feel awfully sorry for you. Stop with the spray tan. That is just horrible. But it doesn't stop. My undergrad is applied anthropology with a focus on historic archaeology, but I'm going to lean more toward the applied with more of the cultural and anthropology side of this, and the bioanthropology side of this. Doesn't matter how much you think that you belong to a certain group. No matter what you think your identity is. If there's nobody else to pick on, and you have the slightest bit of difference in your background, your education, where your parents came from, the way you speak English, if it's just a regional dialect, or you use soda instead of pop or something like that, that's enough of a difference. If that's the biggest difference that they have to go on, then they will go on that, and they will treat you the same as they treated everybody else that they didn't consider pure enough. It does not end. It never ends until the regime is toppled. And we have how many millions of people willing to listen to these words and say, well, I don't like everything that he says, but I like his policy. That is his policy. I don't care if you consider yourself hard on immigration or whatever. Oh, you don't like the fact that we allow refugees in, despite the fact that we've signed international treaties, that it's congressional, that has been passed into congressional law, that we will accept refugees in and asylum seekers because that is our obligation under international treaties, that we ourselves pushed on other countries on how to treat people decently. Just because you're upset with that does not excuse supporting somebody who is calling for genocide, who is inciting a genocide. That's exactly what's going on here. We pretend it's politics, and it isn't. This is not politics. This is criminal. This is criminal. Stochastic terrorism is a thing. And that's where, oh, somebody needs to do this over and over again until somebody takes the law into their own hands and does it. That's not even what this is. This goes beyond stochastic terrorism. This is, when I take office, this is what I'm going to do. Plain, simple threat. And somehow, despite the fact that, threatening to kill or, drive out people who were here legally, the Haitians were here legally. A lot of the people that they have problems with are here legally. Oh, they'll claim they're here illegally because they don't like the fact that they're here. So it's illegal because a product is something they don't like. The process itself has to be illegal. And honestly, illegal is kind of like fascism. That word really doesn't mean much these days. I mean, you look at and I'm cribbing off of Michael Popok here from Democracy Docket and Midas Touch, and his breakdown of the briefs and stuff involved with the federal criminal case against Trump, and Trump's lawyers responding to request to file up to 180 page brief in the case because calling it illegal over and over and over again. They use the term illegal to apply to what was going to that whole process of turning in a 180 page brief, when in fact that brief had been required by the judge in order to comply with the requirements from the Supreme Court as to what was needed in order to justify the criminal charges on election tampering. And I'm not an attorney, but when a practiced, very experienced attorney who does actively practice at the federal level, when he says that, oh, this is why this whole thing was done, I kind of believe him, and it seems to me that if you're calling this kind of thing illegal, then you're also calling the judge's orders illegal. You're also calling the Supreme Court's requirement for a justification like this as illegal. In other words, the entire system is illegal, including the Supreme Court. That is literally what Trump's attorneys were arguing, which is that everything is illegal. And that goes to the heart of the danger of this, because when you accept that just because somebody declares something illegal, that means it's illegal. Just because somebody declares that something is evil, it must be evil. People just take this and they accept it and they internalize it and oh yeah, suddenly everything is illegal, and therefore everything can be easily ignored and dismantled. The whole concept of a society really breaks down under those conditions. And it's very easy to turn people against one another. That's what we're facing. That's what this country is facing. And now this goes right back to Ukraine, to supporting Ukraine, because the source of a lot of this is Russia. They're not putting the words in his mouth. No, they're just finding the people to surround him with that spew this venom. That's what's going on. That's what's been going on for over a decade now. And he was always a bigot. He was always, a bad guy. He was never he was never a good person. He was tolerable. He was tolerable. And something happened. People got around him, got in his ear. And I'm not saying that Trump is a Russian agent or a Russian, Putin's not controlling him. Because the point isn't, Trump is chaos. And that's why all the social media blew up around him, because he was a cultural icon. A hit TV show, was in the movies, was in the WWE Hall of Fame. Tried dabbling in sports, that didn't work out too well for him. Mostly because the NFL recognized how toxic he was, and then McMahon recognized how toxic he was in trying to get the XFL to go head-to-head against the NFL. The AFL decided that, okay, you want to come on as a team owner, then we'll try to do that, and that destroyed the AFL as well. Guy destroys everything he touches, and that's the point. It's not that he's an agent. It's not that he's passing on secrets or anything like that. Although he most certainly is, because the guy can't shut up, much like me. But the people around him, people like Tenet Media. That's the one, they busted Tenet Media mostly because Tenet Media had a paper trail. They were able to lock down the person. They were able to identify the person who was giving the money. And it wasn't Tenet Media that actually got in trouble with the feds. They were just named. It was the person who gave them the money to do what they were doing that was actually the target of the FBI. Because Tenet Media didn't actually violate the laws. They were just using criminal proceeds to do what they were doing. They violated YouTube's terms of service. The actual criminal in the case, the actual defendants in the case, aren't even American. That was the issue. Was that they were funneling in money to screw with American politics, large amounts of money, and it's the kind of stuff that's been going on for years. It's been going on for years, and we know that because the FBI's the FBI's things. They didn't list anybody else really, but they said that they had hundreds of influencers that they knew were also involved in taking money like this. They just didn't have a paper trail to name who was feeding them the money. And it's being taken apart as being, that's being undermined. A lot of why it's being undermined is because Russia itself is being undermined. Russia itself is falling apart. Medvedev said in, I think it was March or April of 2022, he warned the West that Russia would consume itself, would expend all of the entire what makes Russia a state in order to take back Ukraine. They would not give up. They would continue because Ukraine is essential to the Russian identity. And we have a term like that, irredentism, trying to roll back the clock. Ukrainians have never wanted to be a part of Russia. That's always been, the Russians keep trying to genocide them because it's like, oh, we need you as a part of us, but we also don't like who you are or what you stand for. I was watching Operator Starsky, and I suddenly realized what I had to say. I've been sitting on this for a while, for days now, because I'm just so angry, just so furious at the language being used and the fact that so many Americans are willing to look past it for the sake of some nebulous policy change that they think will make everything magically right in their lives. And I understand it. I mean, I do understand. There are massive problems out there. The guy with the concept of a plan is not the person who's going to save you. The guy who rips off all of his contractors is not going to be the guy who saves you. The guy who wrote a book and explained how his first real estate deal involved lying to the government in order to get money, and lying to somebody else about the government in order to get money from them, and using that together. He calls that good business. Well, that really is. You just lied on an official government document, and you're admitting it on paper. But hey, his taxes are so complicated that the IRS can't reasonably untangle them, so we just let him go because it's too hard to prosecute him. It's not worth it. He's just just another developer who's taking out full-page ads in the New York Times, calling for the execution of young minorities who were found innocent of raping a white woman in Central Park. Someone who bankrupted his own casinos because his then wife got an award for how well she managed one of his casinos, but he wasn't recognized with her. I mean, that's all petty stuff, right? That's not worth anybody making a federal case over. Don't know why, but that's always been the case. It's just not worth going after him. So he never got his comeuppance. That's the biggest issue that this country has, is this multi-tier justice system that allows people like that to skate. Because they skate, and they skate all the way up, sometimes all the way up to the top. And they think they can get away with anything. We don't even know what beliefs are at the core of what comes out of his mouth, because he's just reacting to what the crowd's like. And the crowds are ugly. I don't mean that physically. I mean that emotionally. I was driving over the road in 2016 during the campaign. I'd go in the truck stops. There'd always be Trump rallies, and I'd be like, why is anybody paying attention to this guy? What he says is ugly. What the crowds are wanting is ugly. Well, I know, because I remembered, pretty much my whole life, I've known people who would have been perfectly at home in those rallies. It's not a small number of people. It's a pretty significant amount of people. But it's not everyone who's going to be voting for Trump. Maybe half of them. The rest of them are just enablers. They're just people who are like, well, I don't think that I don't think that it's right helping people because I have this asshole family member who benefits from these programs, and I don't think they should because I know what they're like. And I get that. You don't want to help somebody because you see somebody in your family or someone else that you know who's a complete waste, that you consider a complete waste, who's using the system. And you know what? You're always going to have those free riders. You're always going to have that kind of stuff. That's no reason to back someone like this. You're not angry at somebody sitting there in Springfield, Ohio that you didn't even know was there until like 3 weeks ago. You're upset that someone that you consider to be useless is being enabled by the system. You know what? That's fine. I've managed people. I've managed stores. I don't do that currently, but I have. And I know there's a good, probably 10% of the population that has no business being at work anyway. They lower productivity just by being around. I'd rather pay them a full salary to sit on their asses in an apartment playing online, because that allows everybody else to do what they're supposed to be doing. And that is not a popular opinion, especially among employers, but that's my observation of people in general. And this is leverage. It's leverage against us. It's leverage against it's things that come in through this filter. And it's always negative, isn't it? It's always, oh, here's a solution. Even any proposed solutions involve hurting people. It's always about division, always about making us hate each other, always about stirring people up into acts of rebellious violence. And I'm not trying to say that there's no agency there among the people who carry this stuff out, because, they made the choice. They go along with it. They allow themselves to get swept up in it. That's I said, it's been a very emotional week for me, and just watching Operator Starsky on his channel talk about, and I got like 20 minutes into his 2-hour-long video that he posted, which is a good video, and I'm gonna finish it up. But it made me realize that in a lot of ways, I too this week have been kind of embracing that rage, that anger, that feed that kind of mentality. And I'm someone who believes that it's not just that anyone has the power to change the world, but only because other people are there to help them out. And I don't know. This is a reaction channel. This is an opinion channel. This is an editorial channel. This is a pro-democracy channel. This is, you know, a pro-Ukraine channel as well. And probably I could probably find a way to tie almost anything back to back to that conflict, because so much of it does dovetail into it. These are things that have been affecting us since the days of the KGB feeding us disinformation, and we know that because they have told us. There's a wonderful book that was published, Sword in the Shield, the Mitrokhin Archives. Mitrokhin was a KGB, I think a major, who was responsible for moving records from one place to another in the waning days of the Soviet Union, and he transcribed everything he could into like the micro dot kind of stuff, the things that he thought were relevant, and taking them out. And we know that at the end, during the 80s, the Soviet Union's, the KGB's biggest accomplishments were disinformation. They were disinformation. And that disinformation was intended to sow divisions. And who has been in charge of Russia since defeating Yeltsin's party at the polls? Former KGB officer, someone who has kept a tight rein over their intelligence community, someone who has hired hundreds of people to sit there in warehouses, call themselves the Internet Research Agency. There's another one that's been uncovered. I forget what they're called, but their focus is on this other group. Their whole focus is on creating social media content, right? Talking, a few hundred people, each of them creating multiple memes a day, posting them online. Everybody just kind of, upvoting one another stuff on the various platforms, and creating a lot of engagement and stuff. And they're not really bots. They're not really bots. But their whole job is to make disinformation, make division more and more relevant using the algorithms used on social media. And you see the results. You see the results. All this division, all this stuff that we have is fueled by that disinformation, by that propaganda. But hey, you know what? Zelensky visiting an ammunition plant, and the munitions plant that's, making artillery shells that are going to Ukraine. That's a political thing, right? No. Somebody thanking people for the job they're doing, saving the guy's country. That's somehow interfering in U.S. elections. Thanks, Mike Johnson. Thank you for swallowing all of that stuff. Hook, line, and sinker, for being that loyal stooge to the very end. Calling for the Ukrainian ambassador to be dismissed over issuing invitations to people on a list that was compiled by the U.S. Army, following the standard procedures. I guess the real crime there was that that part of Pennsylvania, that county, all their elected officials were Democrats. That's the crime. That's the crime. Zelensky, the crime was that the people there rejected Republicans. There were no Republicans to invite to the tour. So that makes the whole thing criminal. It pretty much says everything you need to know about politics here. Anyway, this has been Casey Mo Reacts. Press a like, subscribe. I know I have at least some people watching my videos because I see the numbers. Likes are free, subscribes are free. Appreciate your support, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Tomorrow's Friday. We're heading into the weekend, and yeah, take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a good day.